From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! We're on the road in Washington, D.C.
Most civilizations of the world, for most of human history, have seen the world in terms of relatedness and connection. And if there's one thing the rights of Mother Earth is waking us to, is we are all connected.
Today, in this Earth Day special, Vandana Shiva, the renowned Indian environmentalist, and Maud Barlow, the Canadian water rights activist. Then, Power Shift 2011. 10,000 young people gathered in Washington, D.C. Among those who spoke, former Green Job czar Van Jones.
The Pledge of Allegiance says liberty and justice for all. Liberty and justice for all. And that's what your movement is about.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The United States has begun using armed Predator drones to attack forces loyal to Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Defense Secretary Robert Gates says President Obama has authorized the use of Predator drones.
Now, the President has said that where we have some unique capabilities, he is willing to use those, and in fact, he has approved the use of armed predators. And I think that today may in fact have been their first mission. So I think that will give us some precision capability.
The U.S. has carried out drone strikes in at least 5 countries in recent years: Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Yemen, and Libya. Meanwhile, Admiral Mike Mullen, chair of the U.S. military's Joint Chiefs of Staff, admitted today the conflict in Libya is moving to a stalemate. Senator John McCain, one of the strongest congressional proponents of the U.S. military intervention, arrived in Libya earlier today to meet with rebel fighters. The Wall Street Journal reports senior U.S. and Iraqi military officials have been secretly negotiating a possible plan to keep about 10,000 U.S. troops in Iraq beyond the scheduled withdrawal of all U.S. forces at year's end. Iraqi officials, though, have expressed concern that a continued U.S. military presence could lead to protests similar to those sweeping other Arab countries. On Thursday, Iraqi officials imposed a curfew in the city of Mosul, where protesters have been staging a sit-in for the past 2 weeks. Protesters have been demanding the departure of U.S. troops and military bases and the release of political prisoners. Major protests are taking place in Syria today, just days after the Syrian government lifted the 48-year-old emergency laws. The protesters on the outskirts of Damascus have been chanting, quote, "The people want the downfall of the regime." In news from Bahrain, at least 32 doctors, including surgeons, physicians, pediatricians, and obstetricians, have reportedly been arrested and detained over the past month. Human rights groups say the arrests are part of a campaign of intimidation that runs directly counter to the Geneva Convention guaranteeing medical care to people wounded in conflict. The Independent of London reports one doctor, an intensive care specialist, was held after she was photographed weeping over a dead protester. Another was arrested while operating on a patient. In Pakistan, U.S. drones have killed 25 people in North Waziristan. The dead reportedly included 5 children and 4 women. The attack strike came 2 days after a visit to Islamabad by Admiral Mike Mullen. In other news from Pakistan, there's been a major development in the case of Mukhtar Mai, a Pakistani woman who spoke out publicly 9 years ago after she was gang raped. The rape had been ordered by a tribal council as punishment for a crime allegedly committed by her 12-year-old brother. At the time, Mukhtar Mai accused 14 men of being involved. In 2002, a court sentenced 6 of the men to death while acquitting the others, citing a lack of evidence. But on Thursday, the Pakistani Supreme Court overturned 5 of the 6 convictions. The death penalty for the 6th man was commuted to life in prison. On Thursday, Mukhtar Mai said she fears her life is now in danger. Haiti's president-elect, Michel Martelly, has called for Haiti to build a new army, a move that has been criticized by some human rights groups. Haiti disbanded its military in 1995. The Haitian military had long been known for its brutality and support for coups. Martelly made the announcement Thursday during a trip to Washington.
I think it's a must that we create a Haitian force. Whether you call it the military, the gendarmerie, it's irrelevant to me. It needs to be a modern army who will have a medical corps, an engineering corps, and we will be ready to intervene in case of whether it's chaos, whether it's catastrophe, the earthquake, or hurricanes, to get involved in reforestation, preserve our forest, a modern army. We don't foresee Haiti going to war with any other country, so it won't be an army with heavy equipment like warships or fighter jets.
A group of prominent Israelis met Thursday in Tel Aviv to announce their support for the formation of an independent Palestinian state. 47 leading Israeli cultural figures and academics signed a declaration of independence from the occupation. Yaron Ezrahi is a professor of political science at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem.
The subjugation of the Palestinian people by Israel is not only the elimination of Palestinian freedom, it also corrupts our freedom in the state of Israel.
A group of Israeli protesters tried to disrupt the event. They heckled the gathering and called the participants traitors. With gas prices above $4 in some states, President Obama's ordered a federal investigation to see if fraud or manipulation in oil markets is behind the spike in gas prices.
The Attorney General is putting together a team whose job it is to root out any cases of fraud or manipulation in the oil markets that might affect gas prices, and that includes the role of traders and speculators. We're going to make sure that nobody's taking advantage of American consumers for their own short-term gain.
Chesapeake Energy has suspended hydraulic fracturing or fracking at its natural gas wells in Pennsylvania after a large spill earlier this week. Thousands of gallons of toxic drilling fluid used in hydraulic fracturing spilled into a Pennsylvania waterway Tuesday night after a blowout at a natural gas well. In political news, embattled Republican Senator John Ensign of Nevada has announced he'll resign amidst an ongoing ethics investigation. And supporters of accused Army whistleblower Bradley Manning disrupted President Obama at a fundraiser in San Francisco Thursday. The protesters, who bought tickets to the $5,000 a plate fundraiser, began singing a song about the military's mistreatment of Manning. The singing was led by Oakland activist Naomi Pitcairn. Supporters of Bradley Manning disrupting President Obama at a fundraiser Thursday. Earlier this week, Bradley Manning was transferred from Quantico to a prison in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.